congressional delegation. In order to introduce our guest, I'm going to share the stage with Fabiola from el Centro de Igualdad y Derechos and Viviana with Café.
Thank you, Zulema, and welcome everybody. I have the pleasure today, and again, my name is Fabiola. I'm the civil rights organizer with the Centro de Igualdad y Derechos, and I have the pleasure to introduce today our mayor from Albuquerque, Mayor Tim Keller. Mayor Keller is not able to join us in person today, but he provided a pre-recorded video, and we are so proud of this administration recognition of the vital contributions of immigrants, commitments to immigrants integration and upholding immigrant-friendly policies. Please play Mayor Keller's statement.
Thank you so much to El Centro and M Café and Somos un Pueblo Unido for bringing us together for this important push to a path for citizenship for essential workers. We know immigrant communities have been part of the building blocks of our city for a long, long time since our founding. We also know immigrant workers stepped up as essential workers during the pandemic, and they play an important role toward recovery. And New Mexico has some of the most inclusive policies when it comes to the local level, and we're doing all we can to support our immigrant communities. That includes $2.5 million in monies that we pushed out to families regardless of status. It also means another $4 million that is being put out to do outreach to immigrant communities when it comes to COVID and health. Now, we also know that when eligible immigrants gain citizenship, our city becomes stronger.
We thank Mayor Tim Keller for his support to the immigrant community. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce my city councillor from District 3 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was raised on the South Side and has served over 20 years in our city and county governments, being an ally to our immigrant community. Welcome, Councillor Roman Tiger Aveda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. As the city councilor from Santa Fe who represents the city's South Side, I have the largest concentration of immigrant and immigrant mixed status families. They are essential to not only our well-being as a district, but also our well-being as a city. As the chairman of the city's finance committee, I am very aware that Santa Fe's economy is heavily dependent on the hospitality, tourism, construction, and restaurant industries. These residents are essential to our financial prosperity. Their participation in our workforce and contribution to our businesses allow us to pay for parks, streets, public safety, and the basic services we expect from local government. As the director of the Santa Fe Boys and Girls Clubs, many of our young members have at least one family member who is an immigrant. These children shouldn't have to worry about participating in extracurricular activities or social programs like the Boys and Girls Club out of fear that a member of their family is going to be discovered and deported. During this COVID-19 pandemic, on the south side of Santa Fe, area code 87507 had the highest rates of infection. Our immigrant and immigrant mixed status families should be eligible for the same COVID relief as the rest of us. So in closing, I'd like to thank Somos Pueblos Unidos for asking me to participate today. I also want to thank our delegation for supporting this legislation. 13% of Santa Fe is immigrant, and over 20 local elected officials who represent Santa Fe, New Mexico representatives, including the Speaker of the House, the mayor, fellow city councilors, county commissioners, school board members, and community college school board members signed on to this because they all know how integral immigrants are to every aspect of our community and how legalization will help a robust recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And now it's the turn of Viviana. She's going to introduce Mayor Ezequiel Salas.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Up next, I'd like to introduce, I believe, Jesus Sanchez, who will be speaking on behalf of Mayor.
Thank you, Viviana. Now, I speak from experience here living in Columbus, and as some of you may know, but some of you may not, is that we live in close proximity with Palomas from Palomas, Mexico, and we are seen as one big community. And essential workers, earning citizenship will vastly help our community in general. For example, we need emergency responders for one. We are vastly understaffed when it comes to people who would like to work in this field, emergency response, childcare services, but they are unable to due to the problems with their getting their citizenship. And the essential workers are workers. They have worked hard their entire life, and they know the responsibility that our citizenship entails. Now, I expand this to other areas, and I believe we know of situations of certain jobs that our regular citizens won't apply for. Regardless, these workers pay their taxes just like any other responsible citizen. And education is also something that is affected. I personally have worked as an educational assistant for 10 years and worked for a teacher for 1 year. That was a year of COVID when COVID happened. And I know how difficult it is for students to receive, to learn without the parents' involvement. Just imagine how hard it is for a parent to not be involved in the education of their children, just because their children have the citizenship, but they as parents don't. And expand this to Deming, when our students, when they go to high school and middle school, they have to have a bus trip for 1 hour just to go to get their education. And why can't we have something in Columbus like a middle school or high school? We're understaffed, but there's no workers here, at least not enough workers to implement a project like that, especially because our schools are already understaffed. We have problems, looking for substitute teachers and the likes to provide a better education. So just imagine the positive impact that some of these people getting the citizenship will entail, just a better education overall. What else can I say? Yes, as some students know, they can get away with not being lax due to having zero consequences. That is something that is also brought up. Gaining legal status will also be a process of a criteria done right. Payment of taxes is one that will be brought up alongside no felonies or convictions, of course. But having a family and having to provide for them is an essential point of criteria also. Having opportunities to better provide for your family is a fine way of having responsible and hard workers earn their citizenship. And for the vision of Columbus is just to have a unified community. We are already out, but we want to unify it a lot more with opportunities of a better life quality, thanks to the efforts of essential workers like emergency responders, childcare services, established farm workers, and education. And that will be it for my part. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jesus, for your participation. And we also thank Mayor Salas for his support to our immigrant community. I'm also pleased to introduce New Mexico House Representative Roger Montoya for Rio Riva District 40, who in his role at Moving Arts has supported and been a stalwart of Somos Española, a membership team of Somos Un Pueblo Unido for over a decade. Welcome, Representative Montoya.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. What an honor to be with you. It is coming from a deep place of commitment and history. Somos Un Pueblo Unido and Somos Española have been absolutely inspiring. I could not say no in terms of linking arms in this fight for justice and equity. As a newly elected state representative with 30 years of nonprofit work in the healthcare industry, battling homelessness, addiction, and through educational initiatives, I have seen close up and personal the contributions that our Mexicano immigrants bring to this community. My district is vast, it is rural. It includes Colfax County, San Miguel, Mora, all of Pecos, and a big part of Rio Arriba County. And I have to say that over the years, it has been an absolute pleasure to be part of the team in fighting really for dignity. In this last session, I'm so proud to be part of a team that brought forth policies that impacted the essential worker communities across healthcare, economic development, tax credits, workforce protections, education for essential workers. It has been such a bright spot in my heart to see that happen on my watch as a newly elected leader. I believe that the climate and the conditions on the national level for pathway to citizenship is ripe. Anything that I can do on the front lines to continue this work, I am completely at your service. And again, you know, when we look at creating economic improvements and sort of creating a system where healthcare is really strong and education, the contributions that the immigrant populations make are palpable and measurable in a way that causes me to fight. One of my most important initiatives this year was to bring equity around infrastructure, not only physical, but social. There's absolutely no way that we can build economies and health and the social determinants of health to promote equity for all residents without that. And that includes a pointed nod and an honor to the immigrant communities of our beautiful state. Our bloodlines are mixed. Our lives are intertwined. There's a distinct interdependence that we cannot forget. The contributions, obviously, in agricultural workers and the hospitality industry, we take those for granted. But it's the taxpayers, it's this ethic, this work ethic that I see in our families from Mexico and other countries as well that are just wanting to claim a place at the table in this beautiful country to contribute from their heart with dignity. It touches me. And in closing, I just want to say that I am at your service. Call on me absolutely anytime, day and night. Muchas gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias, Representative Montoya, for your words and support to our immigrant community. Before we continue, I would like to say that you can find the sign-on letter on the chat. And I also want to share that this sign-on letter at the national level was released today with, I believe, more than 600 signatures on it, plus the 90 signatures of New Mexico. Now, I would like to introduce Roswell Public Schools Board member Hilda Sanchez for District 4, a longtime educator and activist for social justice and supportive ally of our immigrant community. Welcome, Hilda.
Gracias a todos and good afternoon to all. I'm deeply honored to be invited to share my thoughts regarding the core issues that facing our immigrant community. For many years, our immigrant population in Roswell and southeastern New Mexico continue to live in situations of acute vulnerability without access to social services, state protection, and labor standards. Nevertheless, they work, they attend community events, they live side by side with citizens, and their children attend our public education here in the Roswell Independent School District. There are many contributions to our community and our economy go unrecognized. More than 11 million people living in the United States without legal status, and eliminating barriers to immigration will create opportunities for these aspiring Americans, allowing them to unleash their potential, fully participate in society and contribute to the country they call home. We need a fair and efficient immigration system so that undocumented immigrants can join the mainstream of society and stop living in fear. I think it's time to change the system so that skilled workers who contribute to the economy can be joined by their families. Students who graduate can go on to share their skills and recognize their bigger dreams. Today, nearly 3/4 of all Americans support immigration reforms that includes a pathway to citizenship. And among those suffering the most are our children. With thousands enduring separation from family members, the inhumane detentions, and the lack of due process. And children of immigrants in our classroom forces our educators to determine how best to do this work when students' backgrounds do not match their own. They are a reminder that teachers usually have something in common with each student, and that identifying those points of connection is probably the utmost importance. School districts that are successful in helping the immigrants students become successful learners have a few things in common. Number one, they have strong school leaders. Number two, commitment to knowing and understanding immigrant students and their families, and then wraparound community support. All these points make a significant difference in the success of our immigrant students. Immigrants in Roswell and the southeastern New Mexico have lived in constant fear of not knowing what's going to happen to them. And they also live in fear of having no voice. And as all of you are familiar with the southeastern New Mexico, they live in fear of having no voice and power to change what affects them the most. 3 to 4% of our Roswell Independent School District enrollment is made up of immigrant students. Our district serves about 10,000 students, and more than half of those students are economically disadvantaged, and all of our schools are very diverse. As a school board member, my focus is on biliteracy in both English and Spanish to increase student success across all subjects. Our schools and community can help move beyond politics. Our immigrant children deserve a quality education, and they will be more likely to get it if educators create spaces of belonging to welcome and support these students. As board members, we must be champions for immigrant children. These families aspire to do exactly what our parents and our grandparents did when they decided to come to America, which was seeking a better life and an opportunity to contribute to an economy and culture. Immigrants contribute millions of dollars to Roswell's economy. Simply put, immigration is vital to our economic health. As we debate immigration policies, we must remember that immigrants are the economy and the social lifeblood, to our community. In moments of great injustice, we can't afford to be silent. That's one reason why all educators and community activists must stand together, demanding immigrants to regularize their status. This will not only strengthen national security, but also stimulate the economy and enhance New Mexico's rich, vibrant, and diverse culture. And I think the time for common sense, comprehensive, and compassionate immigration reform is long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, School
so
Board
much.
Member Hilda Sanchez. I'm gonna pass it to Viviana.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Las Cruces City Councillor Gabriel Vasquez from District 3. Welcome, Councillor Vasquez.
Gracias, Viviana. Muchas gracias a todos. My name is Gabe Vasquez. I'm proud to serve on the City Council here in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and Doña Ana County. I can't thank these organizations enough for organizing this and for continuing la lucha, continuing to fight for all of us that make New Mexico what it is. Seeing the testimonials of people like Eugenia and Gilberto and Gladys and Gloria and Veronica at the beginning of this presentation of this press conference really lets us know that our neighbors, our family members, folks who we work with are who's at stake in what Congress has the opportunity and the power to do. We have a real shot at this time around. Our hardworking advocates and communities have been fighting for this for decades with no results. And we have to seize these opportunities when they come. This is one of the biggest opportunities that I have seen in the immigrant rights movement. Now, this is very personal to me. I am a first generation American. I live in a mixed status family. I can't see my father or my brother currently who live in Mexico, and I grew up in Ciudad Juarez and still cannot see most of my family, many of who wish that they could have an opportunity to live in this country, but due to the current restrictions, cannot even cross the border on a tourist visa. I also want to thank our congressional delegation who has supported this effort in the reconciliation package, with the exception of Representative Harrell, who represents Southern New Mexico, who has not supported this measure. Here we have a saying that the border crossed us. And before the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, before the Gadsden Purchase, most of our families that lived here in the Mesilla Valley and in Southern New Mexico were Mexicanos. They were Mexican Americans. And before that, they were Piro Manso Tiwa people and Jornada Mogollon people. And so it's not that immigrants are new to this country, in my belief. Immigrants have always been here. We are simply immigrants through an artificial border that has been created. And so when Congress is now taking this historic step to provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, for temporary protected status holders, for essential workers, and for agricultural workers, we have an opportunity to really integrate our community in a way that is fair and that is equitable, so that everybody who's contributing, not just to Las Cruces and Doña Ana County, but to our state tax rolls, to our federal tax rolls, to visitors from out of state, to tourists, and to our own community and our own economy, that we all have a fair share at having a good life with an equitable taxation system that really represents who we are as a people. Now, New Mexico has led for many years in having the most inclusive policies in the nation when it comes to providing benefits to mixed status families, but they should not be the exception. Access to college and scholarships, driver's licenses, healthcare, tax credits and rebates, COVID-19 economic relief, public safety services, and other immigrant-friendly policies should be the status quo. They should not be an exception in New Mexico. And so we have an opportunity to do that with the help of our congressional delegation, which I think understands here in New Mexico that they have a mandate to show the country what New Mexico is actually doing and how we are compassionate and sensible in how we treat our neighbors, our loved ones, our co-workers, is that we can and we should do this. And so we are counting on our members of Congress to fight for us. We are counting on other members of Congress throughout the country to see this through fruition. And so a robust recovery in the United States after the COVID-19 pandemic and in New Mexico can only happen if we finally legalize our workers, our families, again, our relatives and friends who have made an investment in this country, who contribute in so many more ways than just economically. It would boost all of our wages. When their ship rises, our ship rises. And so you talk about productivity, state and local taxes, and the outcomes for our children, those all get better when we give our folks, our immigrant communities, an opportunity to be on the same playing field as the rest of us. And so from our agricultural industry to our hospitality industry, to the students who are studying to be doctors at the Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine here in Las Cruces, immigrants are part of the fabric of who we are. They are part of our culture, our language, our traditions, and it's about time that we are able to finally get something done in Congress. And we have to do it without the poison pills and the discriminationary and other types of policies and amendments that we know some members of Congress will want to introduce. And we have to take a stand against that. The militarization of the border, the expansion of harmful immigration enforcement cannot be a trade-off for what we are trying to do here. Again, we have to be compassionate. We have to lead with courage. We have to make policies that will benefit all of our families, our economy, and public safety. And this reconciliation bill is an opportunity for us to do that. So I'm proud to stand with my community, with my family, with all of you as elected officials that have been elected by your communities to represent these stances as well, to call on Congress and to call on the US Senate to finally get this done. So thank you, Viviana. Thank you for the folks at Café and Somos and everyone else who's working so hard day after day to get this done. I really appreciate it.
Muchas gracias, Councillor Gabriel, for sharing your testimony and your support to our immigrant community. Now it's time for our members of our congressional delegation to send a message to our community. Congresswoman Teresa Fernandez represents New Mexico 3rd Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives. Representative Fernandez is part of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and has shown strong support and leadership for the immigrant community. She wasn't able to attend today, but Elizabeth Arevalo, the legislative director of her office, will share her message. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much for inviting Congresswoman Fernandez today. And as you mentioned, unfortunately, she wasn't able to attend, but she does send her well wishes and thoughts. As many of you know, throughout her career, Congresswoman Fernandez has been proud to work with you all to fight for immigrant communities. And soon after she joined Congress in January, she and her colleagues in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus began to advocate for a pathway to citizenship for essential immigrant workers and their families, dreamers, and TPS holders. And she's done this because she understands that essential workers have given us so much, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And she doesn't think it's enough to simply say thank you to them, but instead believes that Congress must demonstrate that gratitude through action. As many of you know, Congress is currently writing legislation to enact President Biden's Build Back Better plan. And this is a proposal that will be transformative. It would create millions of jobs, cut taxes, lower costs. It makes investments in women and families by providing support for childcare, paid family leave, and universal pre-K. It invests in our schools, in our environment, and in our workers. And we also think it presents a critical opportunity to pass immigration provisions that impact the federal budget. Things like a pathway to citizenship for essential workers and for dreamers and for TPS holders. Right now in the House of Representatives, the Judiciary Committee is tasked with writing the immigration portions of the Build Back Better plan. And over the next couple of weeks, the Judiciary Committee and the other committees in Congress will continue to finalize the details of that plan. Our hope is that these provisions will stay intact and that they will end up in the final bill that Congress ultimately sends to President Biden to become law later this month. So please stay tuned to see what happens with those. But also please know that Congresswoman Leisure Fernandez, along with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, will continue to advocate the ways in which citizenship for essential workers, dreamers, and TPS holders is essential, and fight for the inclusion of that pathway to citizenship in the Build Back Better plan. Thanks again for inviting the Congresswoman in our office today and for all that you guys do.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I have the pleasure again to invite to speak today Yolanda Lucero. She's the field representative of Congresswoman Melanie Stanbury. We would like to welcome Yolanda Lucero. She works really close to Congresswoman Stanbury. El Centro has been working with Congresswoman closely as a state representative and is looking forward to work with her to ensure CD1 has a champion in Washington. Yolanda, adelante.
Muy buenas tardes a todos, and thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so glad to be sharing this space with so many great champions for immigration rights. I'm going to be reading a statement from the Congresswoman. It says, I am proud to represent New Mexico as a border state where our multiculturalism is our strength. I stand in solidarity with our immigrant communities. New Mexicans understand that cultural and economic abundance that immigrants bring into our communities, which is why I am committed to finding a path to citizenship through the budget reconciliation bill. I would like to thank El Centro de Igualdad y Derechos, NM Café, and Somos un Pueblo Unido for their dedication to supporting the dignity and resilience of our immigrant communities. I hope you know that I understand the significance of this moment as a critical opportunity to secure a path to citizenship for so many. I am determined to win this fight for our communities in New Mexico and the nation. All my best, Congresswoman Melanie Stanbury, New Mexico District 1. Thank you all, and I would like to just share with you all that I will be working on our immigration portfolio for the office. So if there's any way that I could continue to support, I'm happy. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Yolanda. Thank you very much to Representative Melanie Stansbury for her support. And we thank all of our guests for their participation in this event. And now we open the space for members of the press to ask their questions. Please write down your questions on the Q&A chat box for us to be able to see them. Thank you. There is one question here. It says, this question is from Lisa Knudsen, and her question is, are you optimistic that some version of the proposal will be approved? Why or why not? It's an open question. Who is willing to answer?
This is Councillor Aveda, and I'd be willing to try and answer that. I think as you've witnessed today, you see, as Representative Montoya actually stated, we are on the front lines. You've heard from school board members, state representatives, city councilors, and because we are so close and on the front lines, I think I think if the federal delegation sees that and hears, the more of us they hear from, I think the more likely this is going to pass. It's something that by far is needed, not just in New Mexico, but throughout the country. Thank you.
And thank you for that, Councillor Aveda. I agree with you. And I will just say that, you know, I think COVID in particular has really shined a light on just how essential our immigrant communities are during a time when the health of our communities and our families was in peril. Immigrant communities stepped up on the front lines in many ways, and they became a lot more visible. And I think that's a reason I'm incredibly hopeful that our lawmakers, not just in New Mexico, but across the country, have seen and understand the value of what we bring to our communities and to our economy. And so I can't think of a better time to seize on that opportunity to make sure that folks who provided for this entire country have an opportunity to live with dignity, with rights, with economic justice. Now is the time, and I am very hopeful that our Congress and our Senate sees that and will seize on this opportunity, especially when Democrats have both the House and the Senate and the administration. I think now is one of the most important times for us to finally provide a pathway of legal citizenship to many millions of people who truly deserve it.
Thank you for your answers. Next question is how many, this question is from Julian to everyone. How many essential workers, dreamers, farm workers, etc. in New Mexico do you estimate might be legalized through reconciliation? And I can sort of answer this question. According to the American Immigration Council, there are 60,000 undocumented immigrants that would that live in New Mexico. And according to the New Mexico Voices for Children, about 30,000 essential workers will benefit from this. Next question. Sorry, I have trouble with this. Another question from Lisa. I am representing sourcenewmexico.com. On the Judiciary Committee, do we know who is opposing? Maybe the staff from our delegation can answer this question. I can repeat the question. On the Judiciary Committee, do we know who is opposing? Okay, at this moment, it's unclear who at this who is opposing. There is another question from Bryce. How do we ensure equity in this process? Who will be prioritized first if proposal becomes a reality? As we heard from the update that was given by the office of Representative Fernandez, Mayor Fernandez, that they're working on that. We really don't have that information at this point. Next question, I'm sorry. Is there any other questions?
Hi, Selena. I don't know if you read this one. It says, how do we ensure equity in this process? Who will be prioritized first in this proposal if it becomes reality?
Yeah, I think that's the answer that I just gave, according to the information that was just given by the the office of Representative Fernandez, it is unclear. We don't have those details right now.
I'm so sorry, Zulema. I chatted what we think is the answer to that. This is Marcela Diaz from Somos
Okay.
Unido, and the idea, of course, which is why we're doing this press conference along with dozens of other states in the country. There was a national press conference earlier today. It really is, the push right now is for all 4 categories: TPS holders, agricultural workers, DACA recipients / dreamers, and of course, essential workers. A lot of this depends on what is negotiated with the parliamentarian as to how many new green cards or new provisions for legalization for these workers are available. Our push, and the push of all the 90 folks who signed on to this letter, is for as many people in these 4 categories to be included in through the budget reconciliation process. And all of that is getting written up this week, as was already told to us by the Judiciary Committee in this moment. And so that is why we're doing this press conference today. That is why we released the national letter and this letter today. And I only wanted to add that we did this in concert with the Fair Immigration Reform Movement, Faith in Action, and dozens of coalitions across the country really pushing for this. So that's the best answer we can give at this point. We want all of these categories to be prioritized.
Thank you, Marcela. There is another question here. Does the current language from the House allow for an undocumented person to obtain an essential position and then become eligible for citizenship? And on the flip side, if someone loses their job during the process, will they lose their ability to become citizens? I don't know if Elizabeth is still here.
No, Elizabeth needed to go,
back. Okay.
but I just put it into the chat from Somos Un Pueblo Unido. It's unclear right now. We're not sure what is being written. It's happening, this week. It's happening within these next couple of weeks in the House Judiciary Committee, and so we don't know.
Thank you. There's another question from Griffin Roxton. Is there a potential timeline on how long this would take to go into effect after the bill is potentially signed? Those details will be written in what is coursing through the House right now. And our priority now is getting all 4 categories included. Okay. It seems like we don't have any more questions. Thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you so much.